You've really started your restructuring with a bang. You've already said that this year you're going to close at least 11 more manufacturing facilities, and you will make that $3 billion cost-cutting mark. Still on track?
Yes, very much on track. It's a plan that we laid out more than a year ago, and the end goal is to reduce the total spend space by $3 billion. And we are on track. We've had to say goodbye to more than 10,000 people since we initiated the restructuring, and we were down $2.2 billion on the spend base in 2018. In 2019, we're going to hit the target of $3 billion, and that's a key element of the whole financial stabilization of the company.
I do want to have viewers take a quick look at the DDIS function here in the Bloomberg, because debt outstanding has been a little bit of a problem for Teva. You have to cut R&D spending even because of it. So if you just take a look, you've got a lot coming due, but you've also taken that down a fair amount since you took over at the helm. How do you plan to continue doing more of that, and how much is it going to affect R&D?
Yeah, so it's a key element of our situation that we have a high debt. When we look at it back a year and a half, it was around $35 billion. Now we've come down to $27 billion in net debt, and we'll continue to take it down. We'll basically be paying back the bonds that expire. So in this year, we'll be paying down $1.7 billion, and we do that out of the operational cash flow. So we've set out financial targets to explain this to the whole world, that we need to have cash earnings above 80%, and we need to get the debt down to a level of net debt to EBITDA below 3. And that's what we're going to do the next 3 to 5 years.
Good morning, Mr. Schultz. It's Guy Johnson in London. Can we talk about the street versus guidance? Where did the street go wrong? You're 220, 250, the street was 280. So I'm curious to know where that gap emerged from.
So we have a regular cycle where we inform the markets, and that happens following every quarter. And I always think that I give very straight answers, very straight guidance in terms of numbers. And if you look at what we realized in the fourth quarter, we had a range of earnings per share, which where the top point was $2.95. We came in at $2.92, so very, very close to the guidance we'd be given. Same thing for cash flow. So when it comes to the future, then of course it's up to anybody in the marketplace to speculate on what might happen in the future. I can only say that I've been communicating for the last year that 2019 would be a trough year for revenues and operating profit. That's a natural consequence of the patent expiry for Copaxone in the US and generic competition there, being offset by the strong growth of Austedo and Ajovy that we've just launched. So the dynamics in the numbers is pretty straightforward. But then when you get to the finer details, then of course sometimes analysts will be more optimistic, more pessimistic than what is actually the case. But if you look at our communication, our guidance, I think it's extremely trustworthy. I've actually, for more than 20 years, not missed a quarterly guidance. So I think we can say that there will always be some uncertainty on the future. And if you have a very dynamic situation like we have, with key products going down in revenue, other key products going up in revenue, then of course the whole dynamic becomes bigger and the uncertainty naturally becomes somewhat bigger.
Talk to us about...
You have high hopes.
Sorry, Guy.
You have high hopes for Ajovy, the new migraine drug. But I'm curious, Mr. Schultz, would you say the risk is to the top end or the bottom end to that target? Because you came through last year. We had a kind of a guidance story at the beginning of last year, and as you say, you came through and you delivered towards the top end of that. So I'm curious as to whether a similar dynamic could be at play here. Are you being very conservative with your guidance here?
No, I'm always trying to be realistic and conservative. As I'm sure you know, having followed this for many years, as you have, you know that it's not a game where if you make your guidance every second time, so 50-50, that's a good performance. You need to make sure you give out guidance where you can promise the investors that you will be able to meet that guidance. And if you are unlucky, you'll still meet the bottom of your guidance. So that's how we think about it. Then, of course, in order to explain the ups and downs, we have communicated today also a lot of the assumptions. So on specific products, what are the assumptions? On specific elements, what are the assumptions? And sometimes in this game, you get lucky that you don't get generic competition, you keep more of your market share. Sometimes you get bad luck that you have earlier competition or your market share doesn't develop as well as you wanted. So I think we give a very holistic picture of our situation, and I do think we give good, clear and conservative guidance.
Back at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference in San Francisco, you said that the free fall in generic drug pricing has probably stopped. Do you still feel that way? Are we stabilizing?
Yes, we are definitely stabilizing. And I think I started saying at the half year that we might be stabilizing. Then after 9 months, I said, now it really looks like we're stabilizing. And we can say now that we are stabilizing. And I think it's partly due to our actions. As you might remember, a year ago, we went out and said that this death spiral of the US generic business is not going to work. Because if you keep taking prices down, your products become eventually unprofitable and you have to stop supplying them. That's not good for the patients. It's not good for the sustainability of the whole business cycle. So we went out and said that all the unprofitable products we had at that time, probably like 10% of our portfolio, that we would renegotiate with the PBMs and explain that we could no longer supply these products on a long-term basis. Now, I think that's been very successful. We are out of some of the products. Some products have had their prices increased. But most important, I think the whole industry has realized that this death spiral of price deductions to very, very low levels, you're talking cents per daily dose and so on, that doesn't work. So if you look at our North American turnover in generics in the fourth quarter, it's actually slightly up compared to the third quarter. So instead of this constant drop we saw for 3-4 years, we're now seeing a nice stabilization.
How are you experiencing what is now a divided Congress? So we are seeing speeding up of approvals for generics, but we're also seeing the speeding up of the process for allowing branded drug makers to get out generics.
Yeah, so I'm always, you could say, thinking about the patients and whether we can bring innovation to the patient, either in new innovative drugs, where of course you need a fair value in order to sustain the R&D efforts, or in biosimilars or generics, where you then take the price down to the benefit of the broad healthcare system. And the value that generics are giving to the US healthcare system is just enormous. It's in the hundreds of billions of dollars every year that comes from the lower prices of generics. And today, more than 90% of all medicine being used every day is coming from generics in the US. Actually, Teva worldwide supply around 200 million people every day with generic medicines. So without this element, we would not be able to afford the healthcare system we have at all. I know there's still tensions in the system, and I don't have a firm political view on exactly how to maneuver there. I'm just saying that the basis is really the combination of innovation, of new effective drugs that help people get better therapy, followed on by biosimilars and generics to make it broadly available and cheap for everybody.
Picking up on that point, Mr. Schultz, where does Teva's future lie? Are you going to be a brand company? Are you going to be a biosimilars company? Are you going to be a generic company? Do you have a particular direction you're going to move in?
Yes, we have a very articulate strategy. We want to be the leading generic company because we have the whole skill base, the development base, the manufacturing base for that, for both simple and complex generics. And at the same time, we want to be a leading biopharmaceutical company. And when I say biopharmaceutical, it's both new innovative biopharmaceuticals, such as Ajovy, the new treatment for chronic migraine we've just launched, and Fastinomab that we're working on together with Regeneron for pain. But it's also biosimilars. And the reason why I think this is a good strategy for us is that we do have the skill base to do everything from the early pilot phase of biologics all the way to the launch and the commercial aspects. And there we have a synergy between biosimilars and biologics, which I think we can utilize to the benefit of patients, but also to the benefit of our shareholders.